steep valleys, lush wildflower meadows nuzzling close to attractive stone villages. And those twisting country lanes, well, they couldn't be anything but British, could they? Well, it's all right for the tourists who pour into this area to walk through it or just to stand and stare, but it's a very different matter if you happen to own a big chunk of it. Also tonight, we're off into the hills, up to the highest pub in England, where double glazing rules, okay, and where the sheep give new meaning to the term frozen lamb. But first, down into the Dales. How would you like to inherit 30,000 prime acres of national parkland, including one of the prettiest villages in the Yorkshire Dales? The snag? Well, you've got to manage the estate and you've got to make it pay. Well, this was an opportunity seized with relish by Dr. John Farrar, when he could have sold the lot and made himself a millionaire several times over. What's more, he won an award for his contribution to rural England. Tony Francis has been to Clapham to discover just why it's an example to the rest of Britain.
We work very hard here, and sometimes you think, oh, is it worth it? And then you look outside and see the peace and tranquility of, you know, there's no wagons going through the village or very few cars.
I mean, we even get guests complaining because it's so quiet.
It's too quiet, they can't
sleep.
It's too
quiet, they can't sleep, you know. I mean, how can you work that one out?
Graham Mort is possibly the last person you'd expect to find in a honeypot village where swallows swoop over the babbling brook and estate agents hover over the 18th century cottages. They can hover all they like over Graham's bijou residence. It never has been and never will be offered for sale, nor will 41 other cottages in this unique settlement. Not if the man in the big house has his way. Dr. John Farrar is a somewhat remote and mysterious lord of the manor who's struggling against the odds to maintain his little corner of England. The soft option would have been to sell off his inheritance, 30,000 acres of spectacular Dales countryside, much easier and infinitely more lucrative than trying to run the village as a business enterprise, which he does.
I think it would probably be the death of me if I did that. No, I think the biggest decision to begin with was whether to have it sold up and add to my medical income or whether to come and accept the challenge. And actual ready cash is not a particularly good thing for a young person, although it sounds very nice to have it. I did feel that that wasn't the line to take.
This is Clapham, close to the junction of Yorkshire, Lancashire and Cumbria, where nearly half the population is handpicked by Dr. Farrar. Young marrieds with children and low incomes have a much better chance of moving in than wealthy outsiders desperate for that country bolt hole.
I'm able to work as an artist in a profession that's very poorly paid. Because I've got a property with lower rent, I think it's been a very good thing in that respect.
So you can survive on very little earnings?
Yeah, we've never, worshipped money, and we don't have to be all that preoccupied with paying the rent, really.
I think we only got this house because I was having twins. I think we were catapulted to the top of this mythical waiting list that everyone's heard about. At the time, the village school was, I think, down to about 28 kids, and very near the magic number where it might have closed.
Now there are 46 pupils at Clapham Primary, a good number considering the population's only 500. A handful of those youngsters come from the neighbouring village of Newby, which fell into the modern trap, full of second homes and weekend cottages, but without a school now, without a shop, without a focal point. It's reached crisis point over the hill in Wensleydale. Fashionable villages like Hawes and Askrigg are bought up by outsiders, and starter homes are non-existent. In Clapham, Dr. Farrar has it all worked out.
Well, I've come across the idea that for every place at the school, you need about 10 houses, and that's based on the assumption that people will get married at about 20 and leave the top end at 80 and have 2 children with 2 years between. It means that there'll be a certain number of years at the infant school,
Yes.
and on that's how I came to that conclusion.
There are a lot of people coming in, retired people, into the private housing, but there are lots of young people coming up into the school. We've got the biggest numbers we've had for some time. The school is in no danger of closing or anything like that because it's a living community.
I think it's very, very apparent in many villages there's no affordable housing for young people, and this is very much a mixed village. There's people of all ages, you know, so there's loads of children, and it's a very healthy balance. You find there's people of all ages living here.
Kate, Donna, Rachel, Josie.
So it's good for the rising fives, but the rising 85s aren't exactly banished. Once you've been offered one of Dr. Farrow's houses, you can grow old in peace. Bert's lived all his life in Clapham and captured just about every angle with his brush.
What rent do you pay now, Bert?
Roughly about £20 a week.
That's quite good, isn't it?
20-some pound a week. Yes, started off 3 and 6pence we were when we first got married. Yes, 1940.
Is your house in reasonable condition? You've got
It
no
is,
water
yes, it
coming in
is.
the roof or anything?
No, it's quite nice, is this house, and it's one of the best of ones we've been in, I think. Aye.
And for £20 a week, I bet you can't
Aye.
believe your good fortune, can you?
No, we'd one over there. I think there's only a wasp's nest holding the roof up.
Under aching rafters, 8 generations of the dead rub shoulders. Woodworm rock in their oak hammocks. Window glass thins against Yorkshire air. The moon's face presses in upon a house sighing with empty beds. Hills are tarnished with silver cloud. The farmer, his coat tied with string, drives up the lane towards lambs dazed with life.
Dr. Farrow was dazed when Ingleborough Estate fell into his lap. He wasn't a Yorkshireman, you see, not even an Englishman. Until he was 32, he wasn't entirely sure where Clapham was. It was while he was working as a GP in Australia that he got the call telling him his uncle had died. He was the nearest surviving relative.
Were you in any way put off by the challenge ahead of you?
Well, the trustees said I ought to consider the economics very carefully because they didn't think it was viable. Later on, they said they tried to put me off.
But they didn't succeed, although it took Dr. Farrow 27 years to clear nearly £1 million of death duties. Still, the work goes on, converting a barn into a craft shop to generate more income from the 150,000 visitors to Clapham every year. It's all part of his plan to make Clapham a working village and balance the books. It already boasts 100 full-time jobs and 60 part-time. I don't know about Lord of the Manor. Isn't he trying to play God?
Well, that's crossed my mind, but I realise once one has let a house, then the law takes over. You can't do anything else. My only choice is to say to someone, yes, you can have a house, or to someone else, no, I'm sorry, you can't.
I think it would be too easy just to imply that it's playing God over the village. On the other hand, it's inevitable that that charge can be levelled against him because of the situation.
And is it levelled against him? Do the tenants mumble under their breath?
I think the tenants have mumbled since the 1950s when he wanted to put bathrooms in the houses and they didn't want them because it meant the rent going up.
What is your ultimate aim then, Dr. Farrow? To hand over to your son to keep this going?
It would be nice if he were able to, but I wouldn't expect him to. I think the pressures are getting pretty big, really, and there will be capital transfer tax of some sort after that, and I wouldn't like to see him forced to start back where I started.
If ever out happens to Dr. Farrow and I don't know whether his son will take it. He has a son, you see, and if he takes it over, it'll be all right. But not that it bother me so much. I'm going on a bit now. But the people that live in the village will probably find a great change if it was sold.
So what would happen to Clapham when you decide to retire? Or when you reach that magical figure of 80?
If I say I don't know, it doesn't mean I don't care. But I would hope that by that time the problems of rural areas will be realised, and I can hold a holding operation until that happens.
There's no such thing as a Dale's idyll or paradise. I think it'd be very boring if there were.
Would you like to stay here for a few years then?
Yeah, I'd love to stay here, yeah.
For good?
If it was £34 a week, you could do it.
I think eventually I'd like to be buried here. Maybe I want to go away between times.
Starts to suffocate Britain in a subtropical cocoon, it'll be some time before its effects are felt at Tan Hill. High up on the cold shoulder of the Pennines, in the middle of a bleak moor, stands the country's highest pub. In the winter, its neighbours are hardy hill sheep. And in the summer, if you wander up from Richmond for a pint, you're well advised to take your thermals. But despite it often being a bit thin, as they say in these parts, life at Tan Hill goes on. They've come from all over the north of England. Sheep farmers, countrymen and women, and tourists looking for a day out, because Tan Hill Open Swaledale Sheep Show is a bit special. It's a fine day for it too. A bonus that, because all too often up here in the Pennines you need your thick jacket and wellies. They've been holding this Swaledale show here at the highest pub in England for 38 years. Ever since some of the local farmers decided over a Sunday night pint or two that after roughing it through the lonely Pennine winters and seeing to the lambing, it was time they had their own show and a good time with it. It's become, over the years, the Crufts of the Swaledale sheep world. An award to one of your sheep here is as high as you can get, and there's some fierce competition. Well out of sight of the gathering crowds, the judges, craggy men of experience from all over the areas where they run Swaledales, fortify themselves for what's going to be a long day in the rings. They've a record entry to cope with from more than 60 exhibitors, and the whisper is that the competition's getting tougher all the time. It looks just a little show, but don't make any mistake. For Swaledales, this is Wembley Cup final day. It doesn't cost much. Subscription to the show is £2, and each entry costs all of 20 pence. Top prize money is only about a £5. It's a grand day for it, but life up here for the sheep farmers and their Swaledales and for the landlord and landlady of the pub is very different in winter. We all say winters are not what they were, but when snow hits these hills in Arkengarthdale, life is hard for sheep and shepherd. Whatever the weather, they have to get across the moor to take hay for the sheep. And nowadays, most of the moorland shepherds get around on these four-wheeler bikes, which don't mind the roughest ground. Hill sheep have to be tough too to survive in the cold, wet conditions up on the moors. The Swaledale is the most numerous breed in the northern counties. You'd expect that. This is its home, and the breed's dense undercoat protects it during the worst winters. And in winter, the Tan Hill pub, unsheltered from the winds on its hilltop, can be an isolated and forbidding place. And this was a mild winter. In the past, the pub's been cut off for days. It makes you wonder who'd put a pub here anyway. Or they probably did a bit of business with the old drovers and coal miners who got the coal for the lead smelters who worked in these parts. These northern dales in winter are not for the masses of walkers and backpackers who hoof it along the Pennine Way in more hospitable months. And this lonely pub with its nearest neighbours 5 miles away can be a forbidding place to live in winter. Landlords and landladies come and go, but one formidable woman, Susan Peacock, stuck it out for 34 years, from 1903 to 1937. If there is a ghost here, it's hers. And they do talk of strange happenings when the ghost walks and the till behind the bar is found open and no one can say why. There's nothing eerie inside. You can just be thankful for the welcoming atmosphere of the old beams, the stone-flagged floor and the log fire which burns 24 hours a day throughout the year. Margaret Baines and her husband Alec and their 3 daughters have been here for 4 years. Longer than most if you leave out Miss Peacock and her ghost. Where are we, in fact, Margaret? We seem to be surrounded by signs saying, welcome to Richmondshire, here's North Yorkshire. Where are we?
Well, we're not too sure at the moment. I mean, we're set off in Durham. We're supposed to be back into Yorkshire. Richmondshire's just come from, nobody's quite sure where. And I should think we'll probably end up in Cumbria where things are looking.
So where do you reckon you are? Do you reckon you're in North Yorkshire just?
Well, we think we're in Yorkshire. I think Durham think different, but we think we're in Yorkshire.
You used to have a darts team, didn't you?
Yeah, we got kicked out at league because they could never get up in winter and it messed them all up, so we got thrown out.
I mean, you're running a unique pub. It's the highest in Great Britain. Is that why you like it? I mean, could you run a pub which wasn't the unique one?
No, I wouldn't want another pub. This is Tanhill and it's us now, you know, it's got to be part of us and hopefully we're part of Tanhill, you know. It's an eccentric farmer buys Tanhill, that's what it said when we bought it. I think they're right.
When I'm doing sheep, Margaret looks after pub like, and, you know, we seem to manage that way, fit one in with the other.
Which do you prefer, pulling pints or looking after Swaledales?
Well, I don't mind either, like, I've been always brought up to look after my sheep and farm, like, and I think if I hadn't it, I would miss it a great deal, like.
What made you buy that pub when you were farming sheep over at Gargrave, the other side of Skipton?
Well, I don't know, everybody asks me this, but it's really a question I can't answer, really.
You just fancied yourself as an innkeeper, didn't you?
That's right, aye.
Of course, the pub has its regulars. Bill Calvert, a local sheep farmer, has been one of them since his first drink from Miss Peacock many years ago.
Landlord says they aren't worth out, this local trade. If it wasn't for visitors, we could pack up. He's right. We know it, but we still come and pester him at Sunday night, you see.
You don't resent the visitors?
It's a bit of real company Sunday night. You get just a few and, you know, it's a better company. It's half a dozen here at Sunday night, and landlord and landlady as well among. Better company than 200 downtown joint job, you see.
The warmth of early summer on sheep show days seemed a long time ahead in February. There's always a wind up here, but today it was just right to keep things cool for the sheep still in their thick fleece.
For about maybe a month before the show, that's the main of the work. But it is only a sheep show, so there is only sheep to deal with.
But there's no shortage of entries. It's got the reputation, hasn't it?
That's right, there's a record entry this year.
And who's this smart exhibitor summing up the opposition?
No, the stuff here to beat Royals.
What's this for?
This is the Royal at Swaledale. Sheep shows for all the year.
Aye. What's the competition like this year then?
Tremendous. Anybody or sheepers can say I'm somebody, it'll be here, you see. Not here for fun, they're here for blood.
There are classes for males and females, tups and shearlings, and hogs and ewes, and gimmer shearlings and gimmer hogs.
Well, there's three main classes in either section. There's the odd tups, tup shearings, and tup hogs, and then there's the yows, gimmer shearings, and gimmer hogs in the female classes, you say.
This is what all this fuss, this interest is really all about. Tanhill Show, Supreme Champion 1990. To win this, it's a bit like winning the Derby.
If any of the exhibitors are confident, and they've kept their entries well out of sight until today, they're not letting on much.
I've won it 5 times with same sheep.
Really?
I've never won it since.
How do you reckon your chances with them?
No idea.
It's tough going here, isn't it?
That's right.
I like the way everybody's non-committal about this.
It's a tremendous show. I mean, there's a lot of great sheep here and a lot of tremendous stocksmen. I mean, an achievement to get a ticket here.
Yeah.
It'll not be long now. Judges and stewards and officials are fed and ready to handle, examine and appraise the best Swaledales in the land.
Right,
we've had lunch, yes, we've had a very good lunch.
Battle can commence now.
Battle has to commence now, yes. I had to take quite a few hours, I think, to get through.
Yes.
It's a very big entry, you know. Yeah.
By the time the judging starts, the little showground behind the pub is full. At the ringside, most of the watchers are experts themselves. They know they're Swaledales, and a lot of them won't agree with the judges. You pay your 20 pence an entry, and you wait for a decision which could well make you thousands of pounds at the back-end sales.
Are you into sheep?
No. Just come for the experience and see what it was all about, really.
See a few characters about?
Oh, yeah, I've met a few.
And there's always the Loft House and Middlesmoor Silver Band, an object lesson in the inequality of the sexes. Most of the bandsmen are women. And if you look round, you can always find someone with another interest in sheep besides rearing them.
Training sheepdogs is my main business. I've just come up here actually just to have a look and then get in the pub.
Just show your face to see if you can sell a dog or two.
Well, yeah, that's right.
It may be warm outside, but inside the pub that 24-hour fire burns on. And there are those with a serious thirst. For Margaret Baines, it's a busy day, and there's a long way to go yet.
It's just a big social gathering as far as we're concerned. You know.
And how long does it go on when the show's over?
Well, we have a legal extension till 2 o'clock in the morning.
I like the use of the word, we have a legal extension.
Yeah, 2 o'clock we have an extension till.
So it's a long day for you, pulling pints, serving food?
Oh yes, yeah. It takes a lot of preparing for, but it's well worth it, as long as everybody has a good day.
For the judges, a day like this is a feat of concentration. With a lot at stake, not least their own reputations, they don't want to make mistakes. And some of those exhibitors who weren't saying a lot about their chances in the morning are now a bit more forthcoming with a few rosettes on the pen.
We've won first with a gimmer shearing, first with a gimmer hog, second for 2 sheep showing milk, and third for best coated.
You must be pretty pleased with yourself,
Very pleased, yes. Very pleased. When you sell tups at the sales, you can say that so this one has a good tup lamb this time, and next year, hopefully, all being well, we'll be able to say that's out of gimmer shearing that won at Tan Hill.
With a 2 o'clock extension, time doesn't matter much today, but it'll be a night of argument. My tup's better than your tup, never mind what the judges said. And while they're having a good time in early summer, they never forget what it's like up here in the winter. For the chief players in the game, the sheep, the hard work and the hope that next year perhaps it'll be their turn to get a card, as they call it, at Tan Hill.
It's amazing, isn't it, how the passions can be stirred by sheep. But I suppose it's events like the Tan Hill Swaledale show that make England the country it is. Well, that's it for this week. Next week we'll be meeting some of the people who make your summer barbecues possible. See you then.
Leonard Parkin witnesses harvest time in the Wash next Monday at 6:30. And coming up after the break, the Cook Report investigates an issue that's in the blood.